Coach, now closing in on the season opener coming up on Monday against Robert Morris, where do you think your team has improved the most in the 27, I think it is, fall practices that you've had?
Yeah, we have a very coachable group. You don't always know that that's going to be the case. I think all of us as coaches hope that that's the case as you build your team and roster. And on our end, having 10 new players coming from different countries, different college basketball programs, 6 of them being freshmen, you know, I put that as the number one priority because you can only improve if you have a group that's willing to learn, willing to work hard, that can fight through the adversity and the long grind of what a college basketball season is. And I go back to the summer months and the early fall, our trip to the Bahamas, and now as we're closing in on finishing these 30 practices this fall, I believe that just we've improved across the board. We had a lot of things that we need to improve on because of our lack of experience, but I enjoy coaching these guys. And other than maybe once or twice in the last 2 months, we've really shown up every day willing to compete and get better as a group.
With those 10 new guys, and you talked on the podcast with Adam about your freshman year at Pittsburgh, kind of your welcome to college basketball moment and getting more comfortable as the season goes on. Have you seen that with your 6 freshmen as, you know, as the summer goes by, as the fall, you get ready for the season opener? Have they gotten more comfortable?
Our freshmen are improving. They are getting more comfortable. Each one of them has their own situation. You know, I think that they're all different from each other, but I really like our freshman class. You know, I think that every one of them has a bright future in college basketball here at Xavier. Some of them will get more of an opportunity this coming year, but that doesn't mean those that don't or those that are more limited can't end up being a starter or a really good player, an all-conference player for us, because their development is at different I think, points. You know, I think Trey Green has really stood out in a positive way for us. You know, Trey has a unique set of experiences on the travel team circuit, playing high school basketball, really on the national scale. And although he's a freshman, you know, he's wise beyond his years. I think he's more confident and maybe more ready on day one to impact winning than not some of our other freshmen, but just maybe even freshmen in general. And his ability to shoot really can change a game. Similar to what we experienced with Sule Boom last year. Sule was our playmaker and a point guard, but so many different games he impacted winning with his shooting. I think Trey Green can do that on this year's team, even as a freshman.
Coach, you mentioned the international players. Has there been any actual language barrier issues for you guys as you've gotten into this?
Somewhat. They would be able to answer that better than me. I find it amazing how well they communicate. You know, academically, they're doing a great job. When they don't understand something, they're eager to learn. And that's a big part of this. English is not their first language in all 3 of their cases, but they can have a conversation. I find them very coachable, teachable, and you know, sometimes we just have to be careful that we don't let anything go by them. So in other words, double checking and making sure that when we institute something that's new, when we are covering film, that at the end of what we finished covering, that double checking, are we able to gather all that? And for the most part, yes, and when not, they've been able to get extra help. But all 3 of them have done a really good job communicating. And I think each week that they're here, both on and off the court, being able to understand, read, communicate becomes easier for them.
How much has your depth chart changed from week 1 of preseason practices to now? Has it fluctuated a lot in your opinion, or has it stayed pretty much the same?
It has fluctuated, and I believe that will be the case throughout the year. There isn't a big difference between what you would call our 3rd or 4th best player, 2 starters, and our 8th or 9th best player, a guy who's coming in off the bench. Some of it is how they're practicing, their development. We're still really young and new at all of this with games and more practices as time moves on. I think it'll change a lot because, again, of our lack of experience and lack of familiarity. Early on, it's hard for freshmen because everything is new. Some of our other players, Dez and Cam Kraft, for example, they have the experience of last year. Others like Davion and Quincy, they have the experience of playing college basketball at another university for many years. So they have some familiarity that a freshman doesn't have. But every week that goes by, as our freshmen are more stable and understand what we're doing, you see their talent start to rise. And I think in a number of cases with our freshman class, my hope where they are today will be a far cry from where we think they can be, even as early as late November. A month from today, for example, I think we have several of our freshmen that can continue to grow and develop simply because of where they are in their careers.
Coach, Dez was a freshman last year. He ended up having a really nice year, helped you guys in a lot of ways. How unique is it for a guy entering year two to sort of become the guy that you look at to be a leader of your entire team?
Right. So when the season ended a year ago, our plan of attack was to really have 3 returning starters: Jerome Hunter, Zach Fremantle, and I look at Dez as a returning starter based on how he progressed as a freshman. Obviously, with Jerome and Zach both being out for this year, it has catapulted Dez to the front of the line. It's almost hard to believe because he's our one returning player. Of all the players that we had a year ago, he's that one guy that was in games and the big games and had a role. So first of all, he has no choice. He has to be in some ways the leader. He has to take that next step. We're very fortunate, though, that he's had an incredible spring, summer, and fall. He's improved as much from his freshman year to his sophomore year as maybe any player that I've been around, just skill-wise, shooting, experience, just growing, becoming more mature, all the things you want to see in a young player as a coach. Dez represents all of those qualities. And this summer he stood out when we went to our foreign trip to the Bahamas, not only on the trip but in our practices. And then certainly this fall he's really stood out. His level of play is at a much higher level. And I expect great things from him. I think he expects great things from himself. And our team is incredibly confident in him as a very good player. Yeah, he's made a big jump, and it's exciting to see.
Sean, you've talked back here. You've talked about the guys that you've lost, the guys you expected to have, but that are now out for the season. Expectations maybe from the outside change a little. I imagine they don't change on the inside coming off a run of the Sweet 16. For you, what is the next step for this program, this team this year?
Right, and a lot like last year, just if you think back to a year ago, it's easy to see the finished product, but where last year's team would have been right now was a lot of questions that needed answered, right? We're 0-0. We've never really seen that team a year ago perform in a real game under a new coach and a staff, and how will they adapt and adopt to our style, new offense, defense, terminology, all those things. So think back to November. Although we played a great schedule, we didn't necessarily get off to a hot start. We started to hit our stride in the month of December and settled in January and February, and obviously became a really good team. But we were so much of a work in progress. We really weren't nearly as good at the beginning as we would have been towards the end. My hope, as we have our team this year with as many new parts, is the same thing will hold true. Not being able to just hold judgment on game one or week one or our first month of the year, knowing that it's going to take some time. That doesn't mean that we can't have a really good season and become a very good team. But I know that we have no chance to be the best we can be here early based on our lack of experience. So every day, practice-wise, game, we have to take advantage of it, grow, build, and we've done some of that already. I believe in the 2 scrimmages we've had, in these practices, we've improved, learned more about ourselves, and that's so much of the quest right now for this year's team. Where will we be in March? Who knows? But we have to take care of these first 4 weeks of November and grow and learn and compete and be the best that we can be, and continue to develop like last year's team did. That's the thing we're most proud of a year ago. It's not what we finished, where we finished at, but I almost feel like how far we came, how we grew, how we learned, and this year's team has to follow that same path.
Well, you've coached for a long time, and so you have teams where you have veteran guys, and it has to feel like a gift for a coach. But on the flip side of that, when you have new guys and young guys, it's a challenge. Do you enjoy that challenge? You've coached for so long. Do you still embrace and enjoy that challenge?
I really enjoy it, especially when you have a group like ours. We are far from perfect, but we are a coachable team. You know, we're a team, a group of guys that I believe wants to learn, that when we show them examples from a year ago, there's nobody in that room who rolls their eyes like, what's this? They're eager to see it, and they want to learn and become that. So I think the work ethic, their passion and love for the game, you know, individual players working extra, we really have that right now, and that's a powerful thing. It makes you excited to come to practice, both as a player and as a coach. And look, if that was an issue at all for us based on where we are, I wouldn't have nearly as much confidence in both our team, but also in our ability to keep getting better. I just know that when you just show up every day and you got a group of talented guys that are willing to learn, that have a great attitude, that wins out. And so far, I really like that. That doesn't guarantee that we're going to be 1-0 on Monday, but I do think it gives us the best chance to be successful and then moving on and growing and continuing that throughout this early season. And our schedule, you know, I wish I could set it up perfectly for 10 new players and 6 freshmen. It's not set up perfectly for as much change as we've experienced. But you learn, even from a year ago, I felt the same way last year. Man, as a new staff, it would be better if we were sitting here in the Cintas a little bit more often, not traveling, building our confidence more, learning through games and winning. But, you know, we challenged ourselves, and we really learned a lot about our team because of the schedule we played. You'll find that will be true this year, too. We're going to learn playing teams like Houston at home. I mean, there's no better lesson than playing that type of competition and growing from it.
Coach, defensively, you mentioned all your new players. Where are you right now in terms of your defense, and how difficult is it to get the group to work together? I think that can be harder than offense a lot of times.
You're right, Joe. And you feel it. The other thing about defense is you really feel the inexperience, like physically, like the freshmen. You know, a freshman on defense. We've had some really good defensive players here at Xavier. I can remember, you know, Stanley Burrell was a guy that we coached my first time here at Xavier. And when Stanley came in, he was, you know, a very, very talented player, and he was more offense than defense. You know, towards the end of his career, he's as good of a defensive player as I've ever coached. It just took a lot of time. He was more sure of himself. His body grew to be really big and strong. And I thought, like, in college basketball, he was the definition of a great defensive player. But if you judged him in his first year, I mean, he didn't know what he didn't know. And we have a lot of that going on. We're making progress every day. We're trying to keep it simple, making sure that, like, every drill that we do, that we get out of it what we're trying to. And I think the next phase for us is to be able to do it in a game. But I don't know if I can tell you, like, our offense is way ahead of our defense, but in the 2 scrimmages we've had some good play defensively, but clearly there's a lot of lessons that we've learned in those 2 scrimmages. And both scrimmages were really good for our team, especially our young players.
Sean, you talked about the schedule, and going into this Big East this year is supposed to be one of the best Big Easts that we've had since realignment. What can you expect this non-conference schedule to do to prepare you for a conference that's supposed to be as good as it is this year?
Right. I think all of us as coaches in the Big East say this with a lot of pride. I think we're certainly capable of being the best basketball conference this season. It's right there on the table with the returning firepower and players from so many teams. You know, Villanova, Marquette, UConn, Creighton. We're talking about, most outstanding players of the Big East tournament, the MVP of the Big East regular season, the back-to-back defensive player of the year, national championship starters. That just doesn't happen very often in one conference. Teams that were in the Elite Eight returning 3 starters, right? So I definitely know what those 20 games are going to feel like. We have to take advantage of it in a positive way. From our fans' perspective, you can't ask for anything more as a season ticket holder. As a student here that loves college basketball, you're going to see quality games here at the Cintas Center from start to finish. And, in the 2 challenges that we're a part of, Big East and Big 12, Big East and Big 10, I feel like we did something wrong, made somebody angry. Because there's no way in the world you would give a team with 10 new players really 2 1 seeds. And that's what we inherited. We're playing Purdue at Purdue with Zach Edey, a team that I think can win the national championship. Some people have them as the preseason number 1. And then we play Houston at home, and I think they could be a 1 seed as well, Calvin Sampson and the great program they have. So in addition to those 20 regular season Big East games, we've been given the gift of playing 2 1 seeds, and yet we have 10 new players. That doesn't make sense to me, but I'm grateful to be here, and we'll take it and do the best that we can.
Sean, Jack was such a unique player at the center position last year. Could you comment on the crop of guys that you're trying to replace him with this season?
Yeah, Jack Nunge was a real pleasure to coach, an amazing student, an incredible person, great teammate, leader, and somebody who is an excellent basketball player. You can't replace him just as soon as he leaves with someone else. For us, we're doing it by committee. If we had Jerome Hunter and Zach Fremantle, I think the answer would be the combination of those 2 guys will replace Jack. A lot of the good things that Jack was able to do day in, day out for us a year ago. But without Zach, Jerome, and Jack, we're really calling upon our young freshmen, Abu Usmain, who's the most experienced front court player, who I think is an excellent defensive player, physical and tough-minded. And so far, I've been really impressed with Abu's attitude because I don't think he's missed a single thing. A lift, an individual workout, all the practices that we had this summer, he participated in every one. And if we've had 27 practices this fall, he's 27 for 27. And when you're an older player, a front court player who shows up every day, you become very dependable and trustworthy. And I think that all of us have learned to feel good about Abu being able to be that type of player for us. Is he Jack Nunge? Very, very different. But Jack was very dependable as well. So I think Abu is able to help the younger guys. And then, Lazar Djokovic, Sasha Siani, Gitas, and then Kachi. Those are new names for everybody. But we're going to have to replace Jack, really our front court from a year ago, by committee. And sometimes we're going to have to play smaller, play more with 4 guards and maybe 1 big to offset that loss. Okay, thank you.